Hey guys, in this week's video we're going to talk about creating melodic content for solos and not taking a lick-based approach. Now before we get started, I want to remind you to check the links below in the description where you'll find links to my musiclessons.com page, as well as links to the equipment that I use and a link to a blog post I put out every Thursday called The Everyday Musician. You know, from early on, I never really was that caught up in using licks or memorized phrases in my playing. Now, I did do it to an extent, and I think we all go through that. And even now, if you check some of my other videos, you'll see that I put out a series called Try This, where I write out specific ideas to incorporate or to try in your practice. Now, I'm not against the idea of using licks or patterns. Overall, when I write those type of things out for myself, it's to explore some kind of a concept or to put something in my playing that I would like to be there. And that also applies to when you are thinking about transcribing and using licks from other players. You hear something that you like to have in your playing and you want to incorporate that. So I completely understand that, and I'm not against it. However, the majority of my practice when it comes to improvisation has nothing to do with putting patterns or set licks into my playing. It really comes from setting certain limitations on what I'm doing. And this also goes back to one of the videos, one of these for sure goes back to a video I did for musiclessons.com called Navigating the Changes. And if you go to the link below in the description to musiclessons.com, you'll find that there's a course I did on that. But what I want to do is throw out an idea or two here in improvisation and some things that I like to incorporate or think about when I'm playing. And this, for me, allows a continuous building of ideas. I'm not locked into the set pattern or set lick, more of I can use some sort of a limitation in order to push further, to develop some more ideas. So there's a framework that I have in place, and what I'm going to do is take a familiar chord progression, the very first few bars of All Things You Are, just because one, it's a familiar chord progression, and two, for the most part, the harmony itself is fairly simple. So I'm sure many of you know All the Things You Are, but let me just go through here really quick to at least decipher a bit here on what I'm looking at when I'm playing over top of this, and then I'll go into playing some ideas here. So what we start off with the F minor 7, going to B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7, D flat major 7, and then I put, some people do, some people don't. It's up to you how you want to do this. You could eliminate one or the other, but I put the 2, 5 to C major, so the D minor 7, G7 to a C major chord. So all this beginning part, what we have is, it all is coming from A flat in the beginning, right? It's a 6, 2, 5, 1, 4 chord. And then it briefly goes into this major, C major, right? And what I want to do is go through the first part of that. I have it set in my loop station. That way we can go through the first part of that. And I'm going to throw out just, let's do a couple ideas here. One is I'm going to use the melody as the focal point for developing some ideas. So I'm going to hint at the melody, and I'm going to use the notes that are mainly within the A flat tonal center, and then when it switches over to C, then I'll go for that as well. But I'm going to start with just playing off the melody, and I can incorporate other notes in there as well. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and play that so you can hear where I'm coming from. And I'm not thinking about licks. Once again, I'm using a simple concept of melody to develop a little bit further. So what you were hearing is that I was going through the melody and I was just playing off of the main notes and then throwing in some other notes that are part of the tonal center, right? The part of the key. And once again, I'm not thinking about licks. I'm trying to hear what's going on in my mind, like singing along. And I'm not going to do it right now on camera, but usually when I go out and I'm performing, what I have is, or what I do is, I vocalize with what I'm doing. Now the question for me is whether or not I'm singing what I'm playing or I'm playing what I'm singing. I don't know. They both happen at the same time. And I've thought about it for a minute. It's not something I've really stressed out about. I've tried to think about whether or not I'm doing one over the other. I don't have a clue, but whatever's going on, it tends to work. And one more thing in line with that is what I've noticed is that if I'm getting to a point where it feels like my playing is becoming pretty stagnant, or I'm getting into a rut of running the same type of rhythmic material as I'm playing, what I've noticed for me is that if I start doing this singing along, vocalizing with what I'm doing, is that it breaks it pretty fast. So you may try that out in, when you're performing or just when you're practicing your improvisation, just to see what will happen. And a lot of times, like I had a professor tell me one time, a lot of times the ideas that we have in our head are a lot more hip than the ones that, we're just allowing muscle memory to take charge of. So, give that a shot if you're finding that you're running into any stagnant patterns in your playing. Now, the second part of this, another idea that I would like to throw out is using a rhythm to make my way through the chord progression. So staying more focused on the rhythmic aspect. It doesn't have to be the melody that I'm emphasizing, although it could be. It's just going to be a certain rhythmic idea that I latch on to. Now, I don't have a preconceived rhythmic idea before I'm about ready to play this for you right now. So this is really going to be truly improvisational, and it's going to be on the spot. And what I'm going to do is play along with the chord progression for a moment and find some sort of a rhythmic idea that stands out, and then I'll start to lock onto it. So I'm not trying to force myself into it, although if you want to go ahead and jot down a list of rhythmic ideas that you could use over top of this, that's great. And I've done a few of those things myself, and that could also open up some things that maybe won't just come out into your playing. Maybe you heard someone solo, or you heard someone phrase something a certain way on a favorite recording, and by doing this, by taking that and just jotting down the idea, maybe, that could provide a little bit more insight into that person's playing. Maybe it would help you get more into their playing by doing this without actually taking the harmonic knowledge from the solo. So you're just taking one aspect of it. Now, once again, I'm not thinking about any specific lick. I'm just going to turn on the loop station, let the chord progression go by, and I'm going to start to jump in. So let's see what happens. Wish me luck. So what you were hearing there, the very first thing, it actually came pretty quick to me was I don't know, I just started playing. I went, and I started to take that idea and use that throughout. Now, I would change it up a little bit, and I would try to incorporate a few other ideas into that as well. And off the top of my head, if I just think about, I'm just going to think about the key center just for a minute of A flat, right? And try something here. So if I take that idea, I'm actually going through the chord progression out of habit. We'll keep doing that. So what could happen is I was going between the two notes. I started this with the 9 and the root, or the 2, the second scale degree and the root on the F minor 7. So instead of playing just those two notes, that's 3 notes that I can choose from, right? So now I can turn it into or. You see what I'm saying? You could take one little idea, very simple, 3 notes. Whether you repeat it, I could have even done. I could have done that. Probably, maybe I'll do that from time to time, but that's probably not the way that I would continue my solo. But there's nothing wrong with it. What I'm saying is that you could take something as simple as that, and there's so many permutations that you could come up with. Now, feel free to write those down. For me, early on, I wrote down a lot of ideas, and some people find it very beneficial to write out ideas and to come back to. And sometimes you need to see it on paper. There are several concepts that I worked on early on where I had to write them down, or else it somewhat made sense in my head, but until I seen it, then it really didn't have a lot of meaning to me. So maybe you jot down a whole list. I mean, how many permutations can you come up with on something like that? Just what I did, just starting here. You could start anywhere and work with this. You could take bigger leaps in this. I mean, I kept it pretty simple here and doing a major second apart in the beginning, but you could even take that as the chords are shifting and change one note to accommodate maybe a little different flavor of the chord, right? See, there's so many ideas that you can derive from something very simple like that. Call it a motive if you like, So with these ideas that I'm putting out there, that's only 2. And once again, what I like to refer to this as limited creativity. Now, the bigger picture here that I'm going for is I'm going to be working on a course that throws out, there's going to be a list of ideas to work out based on this idea of limited creativity. And the 2 that I threw out today was using the melody and then also using a rhythmic idea. And the one component of it was, I had the chord progression going by. I mean, you could have simplified this, especially with the rhythmic component, you could have simplified it and put it over just a static harmony to really get down what's going on. Or like what we did with All Things You Are, the first part of that really worked on a very basic harmony. So you didn't have to think too much about what was going on. Now, as you adjust that for more complex harmonies, as chord progressions are going by and maybe key, changes are happening, you're modulating, You may have to take it a bit slower, take it out of time, or even write out the ideas ahead of time. But the thing is, you're producing your own language here. And once again, I have no issue with transcribing, taking ideas from other people and implementing it into your playing. All I'm saying is that you could take some very basic concepts and start to develop your own language and apply that into the mix as well. And then you start to discover where your voice is coming from. Hopefully this helped, guys. Don't forget to check the description below where you'll find links to musiclessons.com, the gear, the blog that comes out every Thursday. Don't forget to subscribe and to share this with others, and I'll see you next time.